You wake up each morning certain of your name, your face, the way your hands move through space. You've lived enough years to call yourself a history. But behind the mirror of your daily rituals, behind the illusion of continuity, there's a quiet fracture. And if you listen closely, it's always been there, humming underneath your heartbeat like a hidden metronome. You don't know who or what you are. Let's begin with the simplest illusion you've always taken for granted. Yourself. You believe in the continuity of your identity over time, as if you were a single, unbroken thing. But your brain is a patchwork of cognitive modules, memory, language, emotion, motor function, running semi-independently, loosely stitched together by habit and hallucination. The neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga, studying split-brain patients in the 1960s, discovered something devastating. Even when the two hemispheres of the brain were surgically disconnected, the left hemisphere, the interpreter, continued, inventing reasons for behavior it had no access to. When shown a snowy scene to one eye and a chicken claw to the other, a split-brain patient was asked to choose two related images. One hand picked a shovel snow, the other a chicken claw. When asked to explain the choice of shovel, the verbal hemisphere said, to clean out the chicken coop. It didn't know what the other half had seen. It didn't care. It made up a story. You've been doing the same thing all your life. Your brain's interpreter constantly rationalizes your decisions, even when the true causes are subconscious, emotional, or accidental. You think your thoughts are born in your mind, but most are retroactive justifications for instincts you can't even feel. This is not speculation. In countless experiments, Benjamin Libet's timing studies, Daniel Wegner's work on conscious will scientists have shown again and again that decisions arise milliseconds before we are aware of making them. Consciousness lags behind reality. You are the narrator, not the author. The Buddhist concept of unatano self comes into sharp relief here. The idea that there is no enduring, independent you matches precisely with what modern neuroscience reveals. Even your memories, the backbone of your identity, are corrupt archives. Every time you recall a memory, you rewrite it. Elizabeth Loftus showed how easy it is to implant false memories into people's lives with nothing more than suggestion and confidence. You believe the past is a record, but your mind keeps editing the footage. Worse still, your brain isn't even a single consistent you. In Robert Ornstein's view, you are a committee of selves, a plurality that never quite resolves. The impatient self, the guilty self, the confident self, the collapsing self. Each one steps forward, wears the mask, speaks through your mouth, and retreats. You say I, but the I is borrowed from whoever happened to be awake inside your skull. At that moment, have you ever wondered who listens to your thoughts? The voice in your head, whose voice is it? If it were truly you, why does it argue with itself? The psychologist Julian Jaynes proposed that early humans heard thoughts as external voices, divine commands from gods or ancestors. His radical theory of the bicameral mind suggests consciousness, as you know it, is a recent cultural invention, not a biological given. Before language turned inward, we may not have thought the way we do now. Inner speech was not in a dot. In some ways, it still isn't. Every word in your mind is inherited. Every concept passed down. The structure of your thought is shaped by the limits of your language. You think in symbols created by others. You explain your life using metaphors handed to you by a society that never knew you. George Lakoff and Mark Johnson argued that even your metaphor's argument is war. Time is money. The mind is a container. shape your very perception of reality. So what remains, that is you. Strip away your language, your memories, your justifications, your sense of time, your continuity. What is left? A field of experience, flickering, unstable, loosely anchored to a name on a government form you trust. In that name, in the history it carries, but even that is built on shifting tectonics. Your past is a map drawn by unreliable cartographers. Who's to say the version you remember isn't already a lie, reconstructed 1,000 times to protect the fragile illusion of being whole? This is why trauma shatters people, not because the event is too painful, but because it reveals the self as fragile fiction. A trauma doesn't just hurt, it unmasks. And even now, as you try to center yourself in this thought, to push back with confidence, I know who I am, you're clinging to a story, a narrative loop written by brain chemistry, childhood, fragments, cultural myths, and blind emotion. You were shaped in the dark by forces that never once asked your permission. What if the voice that says I exist is just a trick of grammar? And if so, who is asking this question right now? You're told to be present, mindful, aware of the now, as if the present moment were a place of refuge. But the now you think you're inhabiting is already gone. By the time your mind touches it, it has decayed. You are always late to your own life. Every sensation you feel is lagging behind. Your vision, your hearing, your thoughts each must pass through delays of processing, transmission, and interpretation. Light strikes your retina, but your brain doesn't see. Not immediately. Neural signals travel slowly, just a few hundred feet per second, yet your mind paints a seamless world. It edits out the delay, fills in the gaps, adds meaning where there is none. You are not in the world, you are in a simulation of it. In 1999, neuroscientist David Eagleman demonstrated the temporal binding illusion. He showed that your brain often misorders events to create a cohesive timeline. If a flash and a sound occur within a certain window, your mind will rearrange their sequence to make sense. You don't experience reality as it is. You experience what feels real. Time, for you, is emotional. It gets worse, because the very concept of now is a myth. Physics tells us there is no objective present. Einstein dismantled that with special relativity. Two observers moving at different velocities will not agree on what events are simultaneous. There is no universal clock, no master rhythm ticking through the cosmos. The now you hold so dearly is a personal hallucination, your brain's best guess at organizing chaos into a digestible lie. When you look at the stars, you're not seeing them as they are, you're seeing them as they were. Light from some stars takes billions of years to reach you. You are always looking into the past. But here's the horror. Everything is the past. There is no direct access to the present. Your body, your senses, your consciousness, they are stuck in a permanent delay. And yet you build your life on the illusion of immediacy. Now, step deeper. Your brain is a prediction machine. It doesn't merely register what is, it forecasts what should be. Predictive processing theory, now central to neuroscience, suggests that perception is just your brain's attempt to match incoming sensory data with internal models. You see what you expect to see. You hear what you expect to hear. Most of the time, your brain ignores what's actually happening and substitutes its best guess. Sensory data is just noise confirmation or correction to the narrative already running inside your skull. What you call reality is the residue of expectation. If you walk through your home in the dark, your brain fills in the gaps. You don't bump into walls not because you see them, but because your brain is simulating them. When those predictions are wrong, when the cup you expected isn't where you left it, when a person behaves unpredictably, you feel a rupture, a glitch in the simulation. That discomfort, it's the boundary of your reality breaking. This is why déjà vu feels so unsettling. Not because something repeats, but because your prediction error collapses. You feel like you've seen this before, because your brain is suddenly unsure whether it's predicting or remembering. Time folds in on itself. Past and present blur. And then there's the dreaded chronostasis, the stopped clock illusion. Ever glanced at a clock and watched the second hand freeze? For a split moment, time stretches. Your brain holds the image longer than it should. That moment feels like eternity, but it never happened. Your mind just inserted it. You cannot trust your sense of duration. You never could. The philosopher Henry Bergson drew a line between measured time and lived time, temps and durée. The former is mathematical, mechanical, indifferent. The latter is elastic, haunted, colored by memory and fear. You live in both. But they rarely agree. A moment of terror lasts an hour. A year of routine vanishes in a blink. The you of today barely remembers the you of last month. How can you be present in a moment that is already becoming a stranger? And what happens when that predictive engine, the model maker, breaks psychosis? Schizophrenic patients often describe their world as fragmented, unreal, terrifying. Their brains fail to predict, fail to bind, fail to compress. Time shatters into static. The now slips through their fingers. Their hallucinations aren't random, they're desperate attempts to restore order, to make meaning where the machine has failed. How far are you from that same disintegration? You cling to routines. You set alarms. You organize calendars. But none of it makes the present real. It only disguises its absence. You think you're in the moment, but you're behind it, always reacting, always chasing the echo of what's already slipped away. You are a ghost trying to hold smoke, and if every breath, every step, every blink of your life is filtered through a delayed, distorted, and hallucinated sense of time, then what, exactly, are you living in? You trust your past. You rely on it. You reach into it for meaning, stability, identity. You think your memories are a trail of breadcrumbs guiding you back to the person you've always been. But memory is not a mirror, it's a murder scene. Tampered with, rearranged, blood scrubbed from the floor, a body missing. And you're the only witness who swears it didn't happen that way. You remember your first love, a childhood wound, the texture of your grandmother's voice. But what you're really remembering isn't the event, it's the last time you remembered it. Memory is recursive. Each retrieval degrades it. Every time you call it up, you repaint it with new emotional tones, new contexts, new lies, and you do it with confidence, with conviction, because false memories don't feel false. They feel yours. Elizabeth Loftus proved this again and again. In controlled experiments, participants were shown fabricated photographs of themselves as children riding in a hot air balloon, a thing that never happened. And yet, they began to remember it. Not just vaguely, but vividly. One subject spoke of the color of the sky, the wind on her face, the way the basket creaked. She was describing fiction with the emotional weight of fact. Your memory is not a file, it's a story. And your brain is a pathological storyteller. Even the act of remembering triggers emotional contamination. The amygdala, Your threat detection system colors every retrieved memory based on your current mood. If you're anxious now, your past becomes filled with dangers. If you're depressed, even joyful memories lose their light. You don't just recall your life, you relive it through the filter of your current self that didn't exist when the memory was formed. So tell me, how can you trust the past if the present keeps rewriting it? Let's go deeper. Consider the Mandela effect. Groups of people collectively remember things that never occurred, movie lines that don't exist, historical events that never happened, spellings that were never real. Luke, I am your father. That line was never said, but you heard it. You're certain you did. Entire communities are bound together by shared delusions of memory. But this is not just a cultural curiosity. It is an epistemic collapse. If memory is not reliable for the individual and not reliable in the collective, if memory can be manipulated, deleted, fabricated, and reinforced with no anchor in fact, then what separates your history from a dream? Look at the experiments of Frederick Bartlett. In the 1930s, he read subjects a Native American folk story, then asked them to recall it over time. What he found was disturbing. With each retelling, subjects transformed the story to fit their cultural biases. Canoes became boats. Spirits became people. The unfamiliar was overwritten with the expected. This is how your entire autobiographical memory works. You edit, you simplify, you delete the uncomfortable and insert the probable. You flatten complexity and polish the story until it resembles something socially acceptable. Your brain is a PR department for a self that never existed in the first place. Even your most sacred memories, your first kiss, the death of someone you loved, the moment you knew who you were, constructions, not in the poetic sense, in the literal neurobiological sense. Your hippocampus assembles fragments, guesses at context, and your cortex stitches the fragments into narrative. You do not remember the truth. You remember what was neurologically convenient. And then there are the gaps, the forgotten traumas, the lost months, the way your brain protects you by destroying evidence. Trauma-induced amnesia is not rare, is common and subtle. A moment too dark to process is swallowed whole, and years later, your body still reacts to a danger your conscious mind cannot locate. The memory isn't gone, it's buried, leaking, warping your present like a gravitational lens, bending your sense of time, of self, of safety. You think the past is behind you. It's not. It's underneath you, pulling at your steps, tilting your balance, rotting the floorboards of your certainty. And what about memory errors you know are errors but still feel real? You've had dreams you can't shake, childhood images you're sure you didn't live through, but feel as intimate as scars. The border between real and imagined blurs inside the brain. The same neural circuits light up whether you recall or invent. You can remember a lie into existence and forget a truth until it dies. In one haunting study, researchers implanted fake memories that led participants to falsely confess to crimes they never committed. Just think about that. Your memory can condemn you. Your memory can betray you to yourself. So what are you supposed to anchor to? Your childhood, that was rebuilt in adolescence. Your adolescence, rewritten in adulthood. Your adulthood, disintegrating as we speak. You say, I remember. But all you mean is, my brain assembled something plausible that feels like it happened, and in a world where no memory can be trusted, not even your most intimate recollections, then what separates your life from fiction? What if everything you think you are is just an improvisation, built from guesses, wounds, and misfires told by a brain too scared to admit it doesn't know what's real? You think in words, you name your fears, you narrate your days, you talk to yourself to make sense of the chaos. You use language like a flashlight in a dark cave, believing that if you describe something precisely enough, you will understand it. But the truth is simpler, crueler. You don't use language. Language uses you. Language isn't a tool. It's a trap. You were born into a structure you didn't design, taught to speak by people who didn't know what they were doing, given a vocabulary that doesn't fit your thoughts, and then told to find your identity within it. Every word you use comes with assumptions buried inside it. Mind, self, real, truth, time. These aren't neutral terms, they're conceptual prisons, each one collapsing a vast field of experience into a predefined category. Consider this. There are entire cultures whose languages have no word for left or right. Instead, they use cardinal directions for everything: north, south, east, west. A Gugu Yamathea speaker in Australia doesn't say, "The cup is to your right," they say, "The cup is to the southwest." This isn't a linguistic quirk. It changes cognition itself. People raised in these environments are more spatially aware. They can't get lost. They see the world differently. Language doesn't just describe reality, it creates it. This hypothesis, long considered controversial, is making a quiet return through modern cognitive science. Language shapes perception. It guides attention. It limits thought. In one study, Russian speakers whose language has separate words for light and dark, blue, were quicker to distinguish shades than English speakers. The categories given by language literally change what the brain sees. You believe you understand your emotions, but you're just tagging them with words: sadness, anger, anxiety. These are blunt labels forced onto infinitely nuanced inner states. And the moment you name a feeling, you kill its complexity. You pin it to the wall like a dead insect, catalogued but lifeless. There are no words for what you really feel. Not really, because your feelings arise before language. They exist in the body, in signals older than speech. By the time you describe them, you've already changed them. Language edits experience. You think this sentence makes sense, but what you're actually doing is hallucinating meaning through a sequence of visual symbols, decoding them with brain circuits that evolved for pattern recognition, not truth. Reading isn't natural. It's a trick your neurons learned under duress. The fact that it feels seamless is just more evidence of how deep the illusion runs. And now consider the ultimate paradox. You can't even think without words. Try it. Try to imagine a complex idea, an abstract concept, a philosophical question without words, not just without speaking them aloud, without mentally narrating, without internal symbols. Pure concept, raw cognition, free of language. You can't, not for long. Your mind keeps grabbing for vocabulary, for grammar, for categories. Your thoughts collapse into syntax, because thought is not free. It is domesticated. Wittgenstein said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." He wasn't exaggerating. If you don't have a word for a thing, it becomes harder to notice, harder to feel, harder to keep. The words you do have become the boundaries of your perception. Your inner life is an alphabet prison, and it gets darker, because language doesn't just limit what you can think. It forces you to think things you never chose. Every time you say I, You are assuming an identity that may not exist. Every time you say is, you imply permanence where there may be only flux. Every noun freezes motion. Every verb assumes agency. Every sentence is a miniature worldview disguised as a communication tool. Language is saturated with metaphysics. You can't escape it. Even silence is framed by what could be said and isn't. Your quiet thoughts, your wordless instincts, they are haunted by a linguistic ghost. The words still linger, unspoken, shaping the form of the void. Even your dreams use language. Even your screams are named, and you didn't invent a single word of it. You were given a system, a syntax, a semantic scaffolding. You inherited it from a culture with its own myths, blind spots, fears. Language carries the biases of history, the rot of ideology, the distortions of religion, politics, power. Every time you open your mouth, you are speaking in code designed by strangers. So when you say, I think, what do you actually mean? Who is doing the thinking? What is doing the thinking? And if language shapes your thoughts, and language was given to you by others, then whose thoughts are you really having? You believe, you choose. You believe your life is made up of decisions, small ones, big ones, sacred ones, what to eat, who to love, where to live. You speak as if you are the sum of your choices, as if your agency defines you. But the machine inside you knows better. You don't choose. You post-rationalize. You post-experience. You post-exist. The most terrifying truth about your life is this: you have never made a single, free decision. Let's begin with the illusion of conscious will. Benjamin Libet's Landmark, 1983. Experiment showed that the brain initiates a decision to move nearly half a second before you become aware of having made that decision. His readiness potential findings cracked open a terrifying door that consciousness is just a lagging narrator constructing a story after the fact. Your choice was made before you arrived, and even worse, your brain hides this from you. It generates the illusion of authorship. It inserts the feeling of decision at the moment you think you chose, like a film editor splicing scenes out of order to match the plot. Libet was gentle. Later studies were not. In 2008, neuroscientists using fMRI scanning could predict participants' choices up to 7 seconds before the participants themselves knew what they were going to decide. 7 seconds. That's not free will. That's a puppet experiencing a delayed echo and calling it liberty. So what's happening? Your choices emerge from a cascade of neural activity chemical gradients, electrochemical noise, unconscious pattern, recognition, memory fragments, hormonal states, cultural scripts. 1 billion invisible currents flow beneath your awareness, and then a thought appears. You latch onto it and say, I chose this. No, it chose you. Consider the work of psychologist John Bargh. In one study, participants primed with words associated with old age wrinkle, Florida bingo, subsequently walked more slowly down the hallway. They had no idea why. Another study found that people holding a warm cup judged strangers to be more friendly than those holding a cold one. Touch, temperature, color, scent, every detail manipulates you. You are a machine whose buttons are pressed by a world you cannot see, and yet you feel in control. This is the trick of consciousness. It doesn't reveal the mechanism. It shows only the surface, the decision already dressed up in narrative, stripped of its invisible origins. Your brain is a magician hiding its hands. Let's go further. every decision you make is shaped by architecture you didn't design. Algorithms filter your choices. Google decides what information you see. TikTok decides what your boredom looks like. You don't browse, you're fed. You don't wander, you're channeled. Your digital environment was built to collapse your will into preference. You choose what you're shown. But what you're shown chooses what you choose. You are being optimized, and you're complicit. You call it convenience. You think you are customizing your life, but you're only selecting from pre-curated pathways, options labeled as freedom. The illusion of choice is enough to keep you from noticing the rails beneath your feet. And even your desires are manufactured. Think of advertising. The entire industry exists to create dissatisfaction, to implant a desire and then sell you. The solution: you need this. You'll be more attractive. You'll be safer. These are not facts. These are engineered needs. And your brain, hungry for identity, latches onto them like oxygen. You desire what you've been told is desirable. You want what others seem to want. You have been taught to crave. Even rebellion is a product. Even resistance has a market. And still you insist. But I feel like I choose. That feeling is the trap. The feeling is the soft blanket wrapped around your cognitive cage. Because the feeling of freedom is easier to create than freedom itself. And what about the choices that matter most? Whom you love, whom you hate, what you believe. Attachment theory tells us that much of our adult relational behavior is shaped by patterns imprinted in early childhood. Whether you cling, withdraw, avoid, sabotage, it was written into you long before you understood the rules. You didn't choose how you love. You inherited it. Political psychology reveals that ideology is often shaped by disgust, sensitivity, threat reactivity, and social mirroring, not reason. People become more conservative or liberal depending on gut reactions, not moral reasoning. You did not sit down and weigh each policy on a neutral scale. Your beliefs are moods wrapped in logic. So again, what have you truly chosen? You can't choose your biology. You can't choose your early environment. You can't choose the architecture of your mind. You can't even choose your unconscious biases because they are choosing for you. And even when you change, when you feel the thrill of becoming something new, that too was a domino tipped by something unseen. A book you happened to read, a trauma you couldn't control, a moment that rewired your neural pathways and then disguised itself as insight. And if you were born again tomorrow into a different body, a different culture, a different set of hidden algorithms, what parts of you would remain? What is you without the illusions of choice? And if nothing you are can be separated from the machinery that made you, then what is left to be called free? You spend your life trying to see yourself through memories, through emotions, through the reactions of others. You speak of self-awareness as if it were a light you can turn on inside a dark room. But you are not a mirror reflecting the world. You are a hall of mirrors, each reflection distorted by another, endlessly recursive, infinitely shallow. The harder you look, the less you find. Self-awareness feels like insight, but it's a performance. Consider the mirror test. Developed by Gordon Gallup in 1970, animals are marked with a spot of paint and shown a mirror. Some touch the mark on their body, realizing the reflection is them. Great apes, dolphins, magpies, some pass. Most don't. You might think passing the mirror test makes you special, that you've achieved some kind of selfhood because you can recognize your face. But how deep is that recognition? If your sense of self is bound to a face, then what are you when the face changes? when it ages, when it's scarred, when dementia erases the name attached to it. You say, "That's still me," but what are you pointing to? The face is just a placeholder, a token, a front. You identify with your inner life, instead your thoughts, your feelings, your awareness of being aware. But even this is slippery. Ask yourself, what is the self that watches your thoughts? Is it a stable core, a soul, a stream? Neuroscience has tried again and again to locate the self in the brain, a place where you reside, a single network, a core pattern. But it isn't there. There is no command center, no CEO neuron steering the ship. Instead, there are loosely connected modules, firing in patterns, updating models, filtering noise. The sense of self is emergent, like a song played on an instrument that doesn't know it's making music. And sometimes, the song stops. People with depersonalization disorder report feeling like observers of their own lives, detached, unreal. They describe watching themselves act, speak, cry, but feeling nothing. They are not numb, they are uncoupled. The self dissolves, and the body becomes a puppet, moving through motions without a center. And what is horrifying isn't that they rebroken, it's that they may be glimpsing the truth, because the self isn't something you are, it's something you simulate. And sometimes the simulation glitches, falls silent, exposes the scaffolding. Even in daily life, the self flickers. In flow states, in trauma, in meditation, in orgasm, you vanish. The voice in your head stops narrating, and when it returns, you call it me again, as if it had never left. But who was there during the silence? Let's take a deeper cut. Split brain, patience. When the corpus callosum connecting the two hemispheres is severed, the two sides of the brain stop communicating. In one study, a patient's left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, was shown a picture of a snow scene. The right hand, controlled by the left hemisphere, was shown a chicken claw. Each hand was then asked to select a related image. One picked a shovel, the other a chicken. When asked to explain why he picked the shovel, the patient said, "To clean out the chicken coop." The left hemisphere, which controls language, invented a reason. It had no access to what the right hemisphere had seen, but it couldn't tolerate the dissonance, so it lied, and believed the lie. This is yourself, a confabulation machine, a narrator for a fragmented process it doesn't understand, a storyteller weaving fictions into coherence. You believe in a unified self because your language demands it, because your memory insists on it, because your culture rewards it. But beneath those demands is chaos. Consider Buddhist anatta, the doctrine of no self. Not a religious metaphor, a direct psychological claim that the self is a process, not an entity, a flickering of sensations, memories, impressions, that clinging to a permanent I is the root of suffering. Modern psychology echoes this. The default mode network in your brain lights up when you think about yourself. But this same network is also linked to rumination, depression, anxiety. The more you think about yourself, the more fractured you become. You are not a fixed identity. You are a node in a network of biological impulses, cultural symbols, emotional residues, and environmental feedback loops. You are a verb pretending to be a noun. And what happens when all the feedback stops? Sensory deprivation tanks have been used to induce altered states. Inside, with no light, no sound, no orientation, the brain turns inward. Hallucinations emerge. The boundaries of self dissolve. Without stimulation, the mind consumes itself. If you remove the world, the self erodes. If the self erodes, what is left? A field of awareness with no center, a body with no author, a system still running, still breathing, still thinking without anyone being there. And if that's possible, if it's possible for your body to keep living, for thoughts to keep happening, for memories to keep cycling without you being present, then who, exactly, is pretending to be you right now? You look around and feel confident the world is real. The chair beneath you, the device in your hand, the wind, the breath, the hum of the room. Everything seems solid, external, verifiable. But reality doesn't exist in front of you. It exists through you. And when your perception collapses, so does the world. You've been trained to believe in objectivity, that there's a shared world out there, independent of you. Science, empiricism, logic, these are the tools you're told build a trustworthy picture. But no matter how refined the tool, the image always passes through your filters. You are not perceiving the world. You are experiencing a simulation of your own nervous system's limitations. Let's begin at the edge. Your eyes. You think you see everything. But the visible light spectrum is a tiny sliver, about 0.0035% of the full electromagnetic range. You can't see radio waves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. Bees can, snakes can. Birds can detect magnetic fields. Whales navigate by infrasound. Your reality is a local hallucination. Donald Hoffman, cognitive scientist, argues that evolution didn't select for truth. It selected for fitness. In his mathematical models, organisms that perceive reality accurately are outcompeted by those that perceive it usefully. The creatures that survive are not the ones that see the world as it is, but as they need it to be to stay alive. So what does that make you? Your brain filters out 99% of sensory input. It focuses only on what's relevant to your survival, your goals, your identity. It edits out contradiction. It simplifies motion. It fills in blind spots. The world you think you inhabit is a patchwork hallucination, stitched together in real time. You walk into a familiar room and don't actually see most of it. Your brain just replays the memory. Your vision is top-down, not bottom-up. You impose expectation onto reality, and your senses just confirm it. You are dreaming with your eyes open, and then comes the real collapse. Objective reality is not even required for your experience. Consider hallucinations. In psychosis, people see and hear things that feel real because, to the brain, they are. The perception mechanisms are the same. A hallucination activates the same neural networks as a genuine experience. From the inside, there is no difference. Reality and unreality share a neural infrastructure, and it's not limited to the mentally ill in Charles Bonnet syndrome. Visually impaired individuals begin to hallucinate detailed, complex images, faces, landscapes, animals. Their brains, deprived of input, begin to invent stimulation. The mind demands a world, even if it has to make one up. What does that say about the world you're seeing now? You think dreaming is an exception, but dreaming is your baseline. Every night, your brain constructs fully immersive realities, complete with emotion, logic, and time, all while cut off from external input. You wake up and say, it wasn't real, but you believed it while you were in it. So what exactly changed? Lucid dreamers learn to ask, am I dreaming? But that question rarely arises during the dream itself. You don't question what feels internally consistent. You don't ask if the rules are real. You just obey them. That's what you're doing. Now, and here's the twist. Physics agrees. At the quantum level, reality doesn't exist in the way you think. Observation changes outcomes. Superpositions collapse into definite states only when measured. The double-slit experiment reveals that particles behave as waves until someone watches. Then they snap into form, as if they were waiting for attention. Is the world waiting for you to look at it? And if your observation constructs reality at the smallest level, then is it out there at all? You live in a matrix of perception, memory, language, and attention. You think it's solid because it responds to you. But even solidity is an illusion. At the atomic scale, there is no hardness. What feels solid is just electromagnetic resistance. Atoms are 99.9999% empty space. You are sitting on a ghost made of tension. And what about time? You think time flows. But physics says it doesn't. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously in the block universe model. The flow of time is a perceptual artifact created by entropy and memory. Time doesn't move. You do, so what is real? Is it what persists under scrutiny? But your scrutiny is flawed. Is it what others agree upon? But consensus is easily manufactured. Is it what can't be doubted? But even your own thoughts can deceive you. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," but he never proved what I is, or whether the thinking was voluntary, or whether the AM implied anything more than a transient flash in the dark. You exist in a reality that is constructed, filtered, narrated, and limited. Every truth you hold passes through layers of cognition that have already decided what truth is allowed to mean, and yet, you move through this illusion with confidence. You grip the steering wheel of your life as if there were a road beneath it. But if the world is stitched together from blind perception and neural convenience, if your attention collapses quantum waves into matter, if your mind can hallucinate entire environments while asleep, if your senses reveal less than 1% of what is, if your memory is unreliable and your body a suggestion, then tell me, what makes you so sure you're awake now? You are told that time moves forward, that it flows like a river from past to future, that you were born, that you age, and that one day you will die, always moving in one direction, never turning back. But this narrative is not time. It is a myth stitched into your flesh, a story the brain tells to make sense of something it cannot hold, because time, as you experience it, is not real. It is an illusion curated by decay. The arrow of time is anchored in entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. Things fall apart. Systems move from order to disorder. Ice melts, bodies rot, stars collapse. You think this means time moves. But entropy is not time. It is the record of change. Without memory, without evidence, decay would be meaningless. Your sense of time is not driven by clocks or cosmology. It is driven by loss. Entropy gives you direction because you remember what was, and you fear what will be. Time feels like movement, only because your body is a reminder that it is failing. But physics does not care about your fear. At the level of fundamental equations, there is no past, no future, no direction. The laws work both ways. The universe doesn't tick. It doesn't flow. It just is. The idea of now has no meaning in general relativity. There is no universal present, no master clock. Every observer carries their own time, and in the block universe model defended by many physicists, the past, present, and future all exist. Simultaneously, all moments are equally real. You are not moving through time. You are a fixed slice in a static four-dimensional structure. You do not travel, you are traced. This is not metaphor. This is the logical conclusion of Einstein's theories. If time is a dimension like space, then you are not a traveler, but a shape. Your birth, your death, your dreams, they coexist, already written, inaccessible only by the limitations of your consciousness. But your consciousness lies, because what you call the present is not a moment, it is a blend. Your brain integrates information over a short window, usually around 80 milliseconds, and renders that blend as now. But that blend includes events that technically occurred in the past. Your present is always partially expired. You are haunted by the future before it arrives. Anticipation lights up your brain in patterns nearly identical to memory. The future is remembered. The past is predicted. You live in the blur between two hallucinations. And then there's chronoception, your brain's internal sense of time. It is not constant. It stretches under stress. It contracts under routine. A second can feel like an hour. A year can vanish like a breath. You live inside a distorted accordion, not a timeline. This elasticity can be manipulated. Psychedelics, trauma, extreme boredom all warp your perception of time. You've felt it, a moment expanding infinitely, or an entire day slipping through your fingers with no residue. But those shifts are not just perception. They are windows into the unreliability of time itself. You are not riding time. You are drowning in its uncertainty. And if you want to unravel the final illusion, consider time travel. Not in science fiction, in physics. Closed time-like curves are permitted solutions to Einstein's field equations. Under certain exotic conditions, massive rotating black holes, hypothetical wormholes, space-time can curve in such a way that you return to your own past. It is mathematically consistent. It is horrifying, because if time travel is possible, then causality, most cherished principle, breaks down. You can become your own cause. You can erase your own birth. You can create information from nothing. And if that's even theoretically true, then time is not what you think it is. It's not a river. It's not a path. It's not a punishment. It's a paradox. And so you live your life marking time by events, calendars, seasons, birthdays. You pretend these fragments are a structure. You wrap them around your aging body like scaffolding. But time doesn't care. Time doesn't pass. You do. You are the one decaying. You are the measure of the loss. Your organs keep time. Your skin keeps time. Your cells carry the scars of radiation, oxidation, replication errors. Every heartbeat is a countdown to something you will never see. And still, you insist you're moving forward. But from the outside, you are already complete. Your birth has already happened. Your death has already happened. Everything you've ever feared is already embedded in the structure of space-time. You just can't access it. You are a sealed chamber, tricked by sequence, speaking the word now into an eternal silence. And if all time exists at once, if there is no before or after, if your entire life is already frozen in the amber of the universe, then who, exactly, is still waiting for tomorrow? You wake inside it every day. You brush its teeth. You clothe it, you feed it, you call it mine, like a child holding a broken toy. But your body is not you, it never was. It is an ancient organism that tolerates your consciousness, like a parasite riding a beast. You are a passenger, and worse, this vehicle doesn't even know you're here. You did not design it. You don't control its processes. You don't beat your own heart. You don't digest your food. You don't regulate your immune system, or generate white blood cells, or decide where pain will appear. Your body is an autonomous biomechanical engine, evolved for survival in conditions long extinct. And your mind is its fragile, delusional narrator. Even the movements you think you control are pre-decided. Long before you're aware of lifting your hand, your motor cortex has already initiated the sequence. By the time you feel like you're acting, it's already over. Your mind just claims authorship, like a child running after a parade and pretending to lead it. But that's only the beginning. Your body isn't one, it's many. A collective, a swarm of organisms. Right now, there are more non-human cells in your gut than human ones in your entire body. Trillions of bacteria, viruses, architecting their own chemical messages, influencing your brain, altering your mood, deciding your cravings. Your thoughts are being shaped by microbial whispers in your intestines. Consider this. When mice are given a gut transplant from anxious humans, they become anxious. The microbes themselves carry the emotion. Your panic may not even be yours. You are a host, and the invaders are older than you. Your DNA is not pure either. Nearly 8% of your genome is viral remnants of ancient infections that embedded themselves into your reproductive cells and were passed down as inheritance. You are part virus. You are stitched together from invasions. Your lineage is a palimpsest of violence and absorption. Your cells carry mitochondrial power factories that once lived as independent bacteria. They were swallowed, enslaved, repurposed. You don't run on your own power. You run on the energy of ancient captives. You are a chimera pretending to be singular, and still you claim ownership. I am tired, but your body decided that for you, I am hungry. But your blood sugar levels made that call before the thought arrived. I am in pain. But what you feel is filtered by expectations, by context, by brain chemistry. Soldiers in battle often don't feel catastrophic wounds until later. Pain is not absolute. It's a political negotiation inside your nervous system, and you don't get to vote. Your body can betray you at any moment. A mutation, a clot, a rogue cell turning cancerous, a silent aneurysm waiting to rupture in the night. Most of what will kill you is already inside you, already growing, already rehearsing. The body is not your ally. It is a decaying compromise, and even in health, it lies. You feel like you have a body, but what you really have is a model of a body, a phantom rendered by your brain's sensory map. Amputees report pain in limbs that no longer exist. Feel sensations below the break. Even your sense of where you are in space is an illusion. You don't reside in your head. You don't reside anywhere. You are a floating simulation inside a dying machine. And it gets worse, because you cannot see yourself without mirrors. Your own face is a stranger. You walk through the world as a visual ghost, visible only to others. The version of your body you see in pictures is an inversion. Left is right. You've never seen your true self. You live inside a meat shell that looks nothing like what you imagine, and this shell rots. Every day, skin flakes, nails yellow, joints stiffen, your spine compresses, your hormones shift, your posture changes. You age not in years, but in microscopic degradations. errors in cell division, frayed telomeres, oxidative damage. Every breath is a small surrender. Every heartbeat a countdown. And your brain, the crown jewel, is not exempt. It consumes 20% of your energy. It weakens with neglect. It is vulnerable to inflammation, to blood pressure, to trauma, to boredom. Stress shrinks your hippocampus. Loneliness damages your immune system. Sleep deprivation mimics psychosis. You exist in a delicate equilibrium that is constantly under threat. You are not strong. You are barely functioning. You speak of resilience, of fitness, of optimization. But these are just temporary victories against entropy. The body is not building. It is decaying slowly, and you are calling it progress. You think you have time, but your body is already leaving you, quietly, methodically, neurons dying, muscle fibers atrophying, memory weakening, reflexes slowing, all while you carry on, pretending this ride will last forever. And yet, you say, I am my body. But if your body changes, piece by piece, cell by cell, every 7 years, if your face transforms beyond recognition, if your organs are replaced by machines, if your microbes outnumber your cells, if your actions are initiated before your awareness, if your brain is fed by prisoners and ghosts, then who is the I that claims this decaying thing? What is it that says mine when there is nothing left to own? You wake inside it every day. You brush its teeth. You clothe it. You feed it. You call it mine, like a child holding a broken toy. But your body is not you. It never was. It is an ancient organism that tolerates your consciousness, like a parasite riding a beast. You are a passenger. And worse, this vehicle doesn't even know you're here. You did not design it. You don't control its processes. You don't beat your own heart. You don't digest your food. You don't regulate your immune system, or generate white blood cells, or decide where pain will appear. Your body is an autonomous biomechanical engine, evolved for survival in conditions long extinct. And your mind is its fragile, delusional narrator. Even the movements you think you control are pre-decided. Long before you're aware of lifting your hand, your motor cortex has already initiated the sequence. By the time you feel like you're acting, it's already over. Your mind just claims authorship, like a child running after a parade and pretending to lead it. But that's only the beginning. Your body isn't one, it's many. A collective, a swarm of organisms. Right now, there are more non-human cells in your gut than human ones in your entire body. Trillions of bacteria, viruses, architecting their own chemical messages, influencing your brain, altering your mood, deciding your cravings. Your thoughts are being shaped by microbial whispers in your intestines. Consider this. When mice are given a gut transplant from anxious humans, they become anxious. The microbes themselves carry the emotion. Your panic may not even be yours. You are a host, and the invaders are older than you. Your DNA is not pure either. Nearly 8% of your genome is viral remnants of ancient infections that embedded themselves into your reproductive cells and were passed down as inheritance. You are part virus. You are stitched together from invasions. Your lineage is a palimpsest of violence and absorption. Your cells carry mitochondriotiny power factories that once lived as independent bacteria. They were swallowed, enslaved, repurposed. You don't run on your own power. You run on the energy of ancient captives. You are a chimera pretending to be singular, and still you claim ownership. I am tired, but your body decided that for you, I am hungry. But your blood sugar levels made that call before the thought arrived. I am in pain. But what you feel is filtered by expectations, by context, by brain chemistry. Soldiers in battle often don't feel catastrophic wounds until later. Pain is not absolute. It's a political negotiation inside your nervous system, and you don't get to vote. Your body can betray you at any moment. A mutation, a clot, a rogue cell turning cancerous, a silent aneurysm waiting to rupture in the night. Most of what will kill you is already inside you, already growing, already rehearsing. The body is not your ally. It is a decaying compromise, and even in health, it lies. You feel like you have a body, but what you really have is a model of a body, a phantom rendered by your brain's sensory map. Amputees report pain in limbs that no longer exist. Feel sensations below the break. Even your sense of where you are in space is an illusion. You don't reside in your head. You don't reside anywhere. You are a floating simulation inside a dying machine. And it gets worse, because you cannot see yourself without mirrors. Your own face is a stranger. You walk through the world as a visual ghost, visible only to others. The version of your body you see in pictures is an inversion left is right. You've never seen your true self. You live inside a meat shell that looks nothing like what you imagine, and this shell rots. Every day, skin flakes, nails yellow, joints stiffen, your spine compresses, your hormones shift, your posture changes. You age not in years, but in microscopic degradations, errors in cell division, frayed telomeres, oxidative damage. Every breath is a small surrender, every heartbeat a countdown, and your brain, the crown jewel, is not exempt. It consumes 20% of your energy. It weakens with neglect. It is vulnerable to inflammation, to blood pressure, to trauma, to boredom. Stress shrinks your hippocampus. Loneliness damages your immune system. Sleep deprivation mimics psychosis. You exist in a delicate equilibrium that is constantly under threat. You are not strong. You are barely functioning. You speak of resilience, of fitness, of optimization. But these are just temporary victories against entropy. The body is not building. It is decaying slowly, and you are calling it progress. You think you have time, but your body is already leaving you, quietly, methodically, neurons dying, muscle fibers atrophying, memory weakening, reflexes slowing, all while you carry on, pretending this ride will last forever. And yet, you say, I am my body. But if your body changes, piece by piece, cell by cell, every 7 years, if your face transforms beyond recognition, if your organs are replaced by machines, if your microbes outnumber your cells, if your actions are initiated before your awareness, if your brain is fed by prisoners and ghosts, then who is the I that claims this decaying thing? What is it that says mine when there is nothing left to own? You believe that, you think, that you generate ideas, that your mind is a source of insight, choice, reflection, but thought is not a tool you wield. It is a symptom you experience. Thought arises not from your will, but from your wiring, and most of what you think is not thinking at all. It is reflex, noise, parroted fragments of a language you didn't invent, shaped by assumptions you've never examined, serving motives you will never fully know. Thought is not conscious. It is revealed to consciousness after the fact. In 1991, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet's work on motor intention was extended into cognitive domains. His successors showed that decisions, judgments, even beliefs begin in the brain before they reach awareness. You feel like you are thinking, but you are observing the brain think. Thought happens to you. You are not the engine. You are the echo, and the engine itself is broken. Cognitive psychology has catalogued hundreds of biases, systematic errors in reasoning baked into your neurology. Confirmation bias, availability, heuristic, anchoring, framing effects. You don't think rationally. You think predictably, irrationally. The mind uses shortcuts to conserve energy, and these shortcuts corrupt everything you call logic. And what about the stream of consciousness, the internal monologue that narrates your life? It feels like you, but it's a fragment. Not all people have one. Some experience thought as image, as sensation, as nothing at all. Your voice in the head is not universal. It is not necessary. It is just one interface out of many, and it doesn't even say what you want. It repeats phrases, echoes fears, replays conversations, argues with no one. The inner voice is less a narrator than a broken loudspeaker broadcasting static. You don't control it. You can't turn it off. Try to stop thinking, even for 10 seconds. The mind floods itself. Silence becomes noise. You are addicted to your own narration. Descartes believed thinking proved existence, cogito, ergo sum. But he didn't question the source of thought. He never asked whether thinking was a voluntary act, or whether the I that thinks was the same as the I that watches the thinking. Because there are moments when thought disappears, when the voice falls silent. You felt them in music, in terror, in sex, in awe. The mind pauses, and something deeper takes over. When you return, thought resumes and pretends it never left. Who was there during the silence? You assume thoughts come from you, but they emerge from somewhere. They are triggered by stimuli external or internal that you don't control. A memory arises, a fear emerges, a word flashes. You catch it, claim it, narrate it, but you didn't summon it. You don't know where it came from. You never have. Meditation traditions have understood this for millennia. Sit still, watch the mind, and you'll see. Thought is weather. It moves without pattern. It is not solid. It is not true. It is not yours. And most terrifying of all, it is not required. What remains when thought dissolves? This question has haunted mystics and scientists alike. Because when you strip away the layers language, memory, identity, desire, you begin to see that thought is not the crown of consciousness. It is the fog, and clarity only arrives in its absence. Even dreams are thought, but they unfold without logic. Symbols replace syntax. You experience entire worlds built from fragmentary cognition, and you accept them. In the dream, you don't question, you think, but it's not thought as you know it. It's a degraded, automatic, primal process. And what if waking life is the same? What if most of your thinking is dream logic dressed in daytime light? You believe your thoughts are evidence of your existence, but they are often echoes of others. Your language comes from your parents, your ideas from culture, your beliefs. From imitation, you absorb information and recycle it. You think with other people's words. You solve problems using algorithms you never consciously learned. Your originality is a remix, and even when you think you're deciding, you're just resolving inner conflicts between contradictory subsystems. The brain does not have a single will. It has modules: emotional, rational, instinctual, vying for dominance. What you call a thought is often just the loudest signal in a chemical war. So what is thought? A byproduct, a residue, a function of a nervous system evolved to keep a body alive long enough to reproduce. Consciousness may be an accident, thought a side effect, and you are witness to a process that never needed a witness. The philosopher David Hume saw it clearly. I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. You are not the thinker. You are the thought, appearing and vanishing like a ripple in a pond. And if that's true, if thought is not chosen, if it is not stable, if it is not logical, if it is not yours, if it can stop and leave you intact, if it arises and passes without a self behind it, then what are you when you stop thinking? You speak to understand, you name to control. You believe that language is how you grasp the world, but language does not illuminate reality, it obscures it. It folds infinite chaos into finite symbols. It replaces sensation with syntax, thought, with structure, reality, with narrative. And once you speak, you no longer see. You only translate. Every word you use is a compromise. Language is not truth. It is a map drawn on fog. It pretends precision, but every term is a distortion. You say tree, but which one? What shape? What age? What smell in the wind? You say love, but to whom? How long? Which version? Every word amputates the infinite to fit a human mouth, and still you believe that speaking clarifies. But language didn't evolve for clarity. It evolved for control. It is a social weapon. Think back, before you learned words. You existed in a world of sensation raw, unfiltered, unnamed. Then someone pointed and said, "That's a chair," and the moment collapsed. The sensation became a category. The unknown was named, and the name was obeyed. You never saw the object again. You saw only your agreement about it. Language replaces reality with consensus, and you became fluent in consensus. Now, every time you describe your emotions, your thoughts, your dreams, yourself, you aren't expressing, you're converting, compressing, shrinking the immensity of internal experience into crude, inherited labels. I'm sad, but that sadness is a kaleidoscope: fear, grief, rage, fatigue, existential despair. You reduce it to a word and pretend you've communicated. You lie by limitation, and it's not just emotion. You describe the universe with words like matter, time, energy, laws. But these are metaphors carved from language. Physics doesn't speak, it behaves. We impose structure because our minds cannot tolerate chaos. The equations work, but the words surrounding them are fictions we whisper to ourselves for comfort. Language is compression, and compression is loss. Even memory becomes story through language. As soon as you narrate a moment, you revise it. The words change the meaning. The emotion shifts. The retelling becomes the memory. You think in stories because you were taught to. Because stories are how humans control unpredictability. You never tell the truth. You translate it into coherence. But coherence is not reality. Consider how language limits thought. This is the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The structure of a language shapes what its speakers can perceive. Some languages have no word for blue. Some have no future tense. Some collapse the boundary between self and other. When you speak, you aren't expressing ideas, you are channeling your culture's grammar. Your thoughts are already preformatted. And what about the words? you can't find. You felt things you couldn't say. Images, feelings, inner collisions that refused to compress. You called them indescribable, but they were more than that. They were pre-linguistic. They existed before the cage of language, and the moment you tried to explain, they disappeared. Language does not hold reality. It replaces it with sequence, and it lies. We use passive voice to escape guilt. Mistakes were made. We use euphemisms to disguise violence, collateral damage. We weaponize ambiguity. We dress cruelty in professionalism. Bureaucracies drown action in jargon. Every system of control begins by controlling vocabulary. Newspeak was not fiction. It was prophecy. Your speech is saturated with borrowed scripts. You don't choose most of what you say. Your language is filled with clichés, idioms, memes, inherited metaphors. Time is money. Life is a journey. I have no choice. These are not neutral. They are ideological skeletons, slipped under your skin without consent. Even your silence is shaped by language. What you choose not to say, what feels unspeakable, what words cannot hold. The places where language fails are where truth begins. But you've learned to fear that silence, to fill the void with noise, to never be still long enough to hear what words can't reach. And in argument, language becomes a battlefield. Every debate is a contest of framing. He who defines the terms wins the war. If you accept their words, you've already lost. If you let others name your experience, you've surrendered your agency. Naming is claiming. And yet, you ask, how else can I think? You think in words. You reflect in grammar. But there are other forms. Image, sensation, music, silence, presence. Before you had language, you still felt. Before you had words, you still saw. Thought is possible without speech. But speech has convinced you it is thought. It is not. It is a prosthetic, a tool, and a trap. And if language defines your identity, if it shapes your memory, if it edits your emotion, if it obscures what cannot be spoken, if it replaces sensation with symbol, if every word is an act of forgetting, then what part of you still exists in the silence beneath your speech? You were taught that history is what happened, that it is a record of people, events, civilizations, that the past is solid, written, real. But history is not a record. It is a script. It is not memory. It is narrative. And it does not remember. The truth, it remembers the winners. You believe the timeline you were taught. Empires rose. Wars began. Revolutions happened. Dates, names, flags, maps. But behind every textbook is a blade. Behind every monument is a grave that was never marked. Behind every hero is a silenced voice, because history is not what happened. It's what was allowed to be told, and the first thing power does is edit the past. You know the cliché. History is written by the victors, but do you realize the depth of that violence? When the victors write, they do not just record, they erase. They burn the archives of their enemies. They rename the dead. They criminalize memory. They tell you who mattered, who won, who never existed. You don't read history. You read propaganda that lasted. Consider the Library of Alexandrian, ancient repository of knowledge. Thousands of scrolls lost to fire and war. Countless voices, philosophies, theories vanished. Entire civilizations were erased. The things you call ancient knowledge are survivors, not representatives. The past you study is a skeleton stripped of context. whispered back to you by those who conquered it, and the process never stopped. During colonization, European powers destroyed oral traditions, outlawed native languages, wiped out entire cosmologies. When they wrote exploration, it meant conquest. When they said discovery, it meant erasure. They mapped the world as if it began when they arrived. They planted their flags in stories as well as soil. History is not neutral. It is design. Even within modern democracies, history is rewritten. School books shift based on political winds. Words like slavery, genocide, and occupation are softened, rebranded, omitted. The horror is turned into curriculum. Pain becomes footnote. Whole atrocities become invisible because admitting them threatens the present order. Ask yourself, whose perspective was missing from the last history you read? Was it the peasants, the prisoners, the slaves, the woman's, the indigenous child's? Or did it belong to the man with the sword? There is no such thing as objective history. There are only competing fictions, competing frameworks, competing forgetians. The past is reconstructed in the present for the benefit of the present. Every time someone tells you what happened, ask for whom and why. Even your personal history is suspect. Think of your childhood. Your memories are already distorted by emotion and time. But the stories your family tells those are curated too. You hear anecdotes repeated until they become legend. You hear silences so long they turn to shadows. Your past is reconstructed not just by memory, but by others' interpretations of who you were. And this is how nations function. This is how religions grow. This is how ideology survives. Through ritualized remembering and strategic forgetting. What is tradition if not a kind of historical censorship? And what is nationalism if not weaponized memory? Every monument is an instruction. This is what you are allowed to mourn. Every history book is a mirror. This is the version of yourself you're allowed to believe in. You say you study the past to learn, but what have you learned? That empire is inevitable, that violence is justified, that progress always looks like you. And what about the silences, the lost languages, the unwritten songs, the bodies in mass graves that disappeared, not forgotten, but made forgettable? Their histories were never lost. They were denied access to memory. You live inside a curated dream, and even now, this very moment is already being shaped for future retelling. Media spins. Archives are redacted. Events are reframed. The moment you call now is being sculpted into a version of then that will serve someone later. Your grandchildren will never know what really happened. They will only know what is permitted to remain. The present is a lie told about the past in order to control the future. And if that's true, if the past you trust is a construct, if memory is edited by power, if narratives are sculpted by survival, not accuracy, if entire cultures can vanish without a trace, if you believe in dates, names, and heroes because you were told to, if your very identity is built on inherited myth, who are you when the archive burns? You say I as if you know what that means. You say me, myself, mine, as if there were a solid entity behind the words. But what is the self? A location, a soul, a voice in your head, a continuity over time. You believe. The self exists because you feel it, but feeling is not proof. The self is not a thing, it is a story. A recursive hallucination told by the brain to make sense of its own complexity. And the storyteller doesn't know it's lying. There is no single place in your brain where you live. new central processor, no command center. Consciousness is distributed, fragmented, discontinuous neuroscientist. Michael Gazzaniga's split brain experiments revealed that the left and right hemispheres can operate independently, each with its own perceptions, preferences, and reasoning. When severed, they no longer share information yet. Both insist they are the real you, who speaks when your brain is split. And even when whole, the brain operates in modular systems: visual, auditory, emotional, motor, competing and cooperating to create behavior. The illusion of a unified self emerges after the fact. The brain acts, and then the self narrates. The self is not a cause. It is an effect. You feel like one person, but you are made of selves. The angry self, the grieving self, the ambitious self, the terrified child hiding beneath your adult postures. Each self emerges in context and disappears when not needed. You say, "That wasn't like me, but it was one of you." The self is not stable. It is a mask that changes to match the room. And yet, you believe you are consistent. You remember your past as if it were yours. But your values have shifted. Your goals have changed. Your body has aged. The person you were 10 years ago would barely recognize you. No, and perhaps would not like you. If you met yourself as a stranger, what would you think? The continuity you feel is memory clinging to pattern, but even pattern lies. In Buddhism, the concept of unatonement states that the self is an illusion born from clinging to impermanence. There is no essence behind the flow, only aggregates: body, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The I is a flame with no fuel, a wave with no shore, a name etched in water. You are not a being, you are a becoming, and yet your entire life is structured around this phantom. You defend it, you brand it, you groom it in public and punish it in private. You wrap it in identity, gender, race, nationality, career, taste, and call the wrapping you. But identity is not self. It is costume, social shorthand, performance. And beneath each layer is nothing but the compulsion to layer more. What is left when the costume is stripped? Split-brain patients are not the only ones who fracture. People with dissociative identity disorder manifest fully separate selves, with distinct memories, voices, even allergies. Under extreme stress, the mind divides to preserve itself, and each division believes it is real. So who is the original? There is no original. Only the one telling the story now, and the story is never honest. You explain your choices with reasons. You say, "I did this because..." But studies in neuroscience show that you often decide first, then rationalize. You didn't choose, you acted. Then your self-image filled in the blanks. The self is not a driver. It is a public relations department working overtime to preserve its brand. And the brand must remain coherent, even if it's false. So you delete memories that don't fit. You ignore contradictions. You defend values you don't practice. You say, "I know myself," while changing every moment. The self is not knowledge. It is inertia pretending to be identity, and this inertia can be destroyed through trauma, through psychedelics, through meditation, through neurological illness. The boundaries of the self dissolve, and you glimpse what lies beneath: pure awareness, stripped of narrative. No name, no role, no history, just consciousness, observing, unnamed, terrified, and then the self rushes back desperate to rebuild, because the absence of self is not freedom. It is void. It is falling without ground. You are addicted to your story because the alternative is unthinkable. You would rather be a lie than be nothing. But that's what you are. Not nothing in the sense of worthless, but in the sense of emptiness. There is no fixed self behind your eyes, no soul suspended behind your thoughts, only a process, a function, a machine hallucinating identity to bind a body to a world. And if the self is not singular, if it is not constant, if it is not stable, if it is not honest, if it is not necessary, if it is not even present during your deepest experiences, then who exactly is listening to this voice and calling it their own? You make choices. You say yes or no. You imagine yourself at a crossroads, weighing outcomes, exercising will. But what if the crossroads is fake? What if the weighing is theater? What if choice itself is a ritual, a performance your brain stages? After the decision has already been made, you were taught that you were free. But freedom, like the self, is a useful hallucination. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet's experiments showed that the brain begins preparing actions before you become conscious of deciding them. Measurable activity in the motor cortex appears hundreds of milliseconds before the subject reports a choice. You don't choose to act, you become aware of the choice after your body starts moving. You are not the author. You are the narrator. And still, you believe in freedom because to doubt free will is to doubt responsibility, morality, identity. You fear the collapse of agency more than you fear death. Without choice, who are you? Just a machine, just a puppet, just a mechanism responding to stimuli. Yes, every decision is the result of inputs. Genetics, conditioning, trauma, context, biology, social scripts. You are a convergence point, not a source, a switchboard, not a soul. Your preferences were handed to you, your beliefs installed, your reactions trained. When you choose a meal, a career, a partner, how much of that was truly yours? Your favorite song, was it really chosen? Or just heard at the right age, with the right brain chemistry, in the right cultural moment? Your core values, did you craft them or inherit them? What happens to them under pressure, under fear, under brain damage? The illusion of freedom survives only when examined shallowly. Determinism is not philosophy, it is physics. Every atom follows rules. Every neuron obeys chemistry. From the Big Bang to your breakfast, the universe unfolds by cause and effect. And if your brain is part of that universe, if it is made of matter, then your thoughts, your will are also effects, not causes. But you recoil. You say, I feel free. So does the dice before it lands. You believe you could have done otherwise, but how? If we rewound the universe to this exact moment, same atoms, same breath in your lungs, would you really choose differently? No, you would do the same thing, because you are the same you. The idea of choice requires a gap between who you are and what you do, but there is no gap. There is only unfolding. You experience the illusion of freedom because the complexity of causes overwhelms you. You can't see the wires, so you assume you're untethered. But randomness is not freedom either. Some argue that quantum indeterminacy proves free will, that unpredictability at the smallest scales introduces true choice. But randomness is not control. If your decisions were driven by coin flips in your neurons, that would not make you free, it would make you chaotic. Freedom without agency is noise, and even your desire to believe in free will is not freely chosen. It is evolutionary. Organisms that believe they have control, try harder, survive longer. The belief is adaptive, so nature rewards the illusion. You feel like a chooser because it helps you survive, but the feeling is not evidence, it is a side effect. And when free will shatters, something else breaks. Blame. If people are not free, can they be guilty? If you are not free, can you be proud? What does justice mean if no one could have done otherwise? These questions terrify you because you've built your world on the myth of the chooser. You punish, you praise, you shame, you reward, all based on the assumption of choice. But what if morality is just behavior management? What if guilt is just social conditioning? What if the person you hate is not evil, just built differently? And what if you are too? You love your accomplishments. You defend your failures. You say, I tried, I meant to, I'll do better. But what if trying is just chemistry? What if effort is a neurochemical lottery? What if some people are born incapable of what you call willpower? Then what are you proud of? And yet, there's something deeper. Even your awareness of this illusion was not chosen. You did not decide to doubt free will. This realization arose in you. It emerged from reading, from suffering, from late nights questioning your own certainty. This clarity, this disillusionment, is not a triumph. It is a consequence, and now you live with it. So what does it mean to go on? You still act, you still decide, but you no longer claim authorship. You let the machine run. You surrender the fantasy of control, not out of despair, but precision, because the truth, however bleak, is clearer than the lie. And if every thought is caused, if every action is predicted by context, if free will is an illusion generated by a brain trying to justify its outputs, if your whole life is a sentence written by causes you will never meet, if I could have done otherwise is always a lie, then what do you mean when you say I? You live by time. You plan, you wait, you remember, you hope. You divide your life into before and after, past and future, cause and effect. But time is not a river. It is not flowing. It is not even real, not the way you think it is. Time is not something you move through. It's something your mind constructs to survive, and it's breaking you without you ever touching it. Physics has already betrayed your senses. At the quantum level, time disappears. The equations describing fundamental particles are time-symmetric. There is no preferred direction. Time does not move forward at all. The laws work the same both ways. The arrow of time, as you experience, it is not written into the universe. It's an illusion born of entropy. Things fall apart. That's what gives time its flavor. You watch a glass shatter, and you say it was in the past. But the only reason you know which way time flows is because there is more disorder afterward. Entropy increases. That's it. That's your clock. That's your God. You don't experience time. You experience change. And you assign a direction to it because your brain cannot tolerate chaos neurologically. Your sense of time is even stranger. There is no center for it. No clock inside your head. Your brain pieces together durations, sequences, intervals by comparing signals, sensory patterns, memories. When you're frightened, time stretches. When you're bored, it crawls. When you're in flow, it vanishes. Time is not fixed. It is warped by attention, emotion, novelty. So what are you measuring? Your memories are not stored like a film reel. They are snapshots, reconstructions. Your brain fills in the gaps, the continuity. You feel that time is smooth as artificial. Even your perception of the present is delayed. It takes your brain hundreds of milliseconds to process stimuli, but it aligns all the data to give the illusion of now. You are always living slightly behind yourself, and still, you live by clocks. You live under deadlines. You fear aging. You call yourself early or late. You rush or delay. But the unit seconds, minutes, hours are arbitrary. Divisions created by people to standardize labor. You have internalized industrial time, factory time, economic time. You've forgotten what time was before the schedule. Time used to be seasons, moons, sunlight, hunger. Now it is meetings, notifications, alarms, and those alarms are killing you. Stress over time, chronic urgency erodes your health. It accelerates. Aging disrupts sleep, triggers anxiety. You are haunted by the future, weighed down by the past. You are never here. You are always becoming. You say, not yet, and too late, and someday. But there is no someday. There is only now, endlessly obscured by anticipation. You exist nowhere else, but your mind refuses to stay. You remember, but your memories are simulations, rebuilt, not retrieved. You anticipate, but your predictions are stories, not certainties. You are not in time. Time is in you, and it's fragile. Think of dreams. Time unravels. Minutes become hours. Years pass in seconds. A life begins and ends in one REM cycle. Yet you accept it. You adapt to whatever timeline the mind constructs. You only question it when you wake. What if waking life is the same? Einstein said it clearly. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. In relativity, simultaneity is relative. What happens now for you might already be then for someone moving fast enough in another direction. There is no universal clock, no cosmic present. Time breaks down when examined closely and without a universal present, whereas now you think you are moving through time, but you might be static, a block of space-time already written. Your sense of movement, of growth, of change is your brain playing a film frame by frame. Your future is already there. Your past is not gone. Every moment exists, whether you arrive or not, but you feel it anyway. The pressure, the forwardness, the falling. You chase meaning. You chase improvement. You chase the moment that will finally make sense of the rest. But there is no final moment. Time is not a ladder, it is a loop, and you are circling the same thoughts, the same fears, the same illusions, over and over, mistaking repetition for progress. You think the past shaped you, but the past is reconstructed by the present. Your memories change based on who you are now. You do not emerge from time, you shape it. Every moment, your brain is rewriting the past and predicting the future to justify what's happening now. Causality might be backward, so what do you really know? If time is perception, if now is delayed, if the future already exists, if the past changes with memory, if entropy is the only true clock, if the sense of flowing forward is a side effect of being alive, then where exactly are you right now? You dread death. You measure your life by how close it is. You plan around it, deny it, mythologize it, fear it in quiet moments. You imagine a moment where you will vanish, where the lights go out, where you will cease. But death is not what you think it is, because the thing you think is dying was never truly born. You were not created. You were compiled, a collection of atoms borrowed from stars, soil, bloodlines, a process, not a person, a pattern, not a presence. Your cells regenerate, your memories rewrite, your thoughts repeat, and still you call it you. But if there was never a solid you, then what is there to lose? You imagine your birth as a beginning, but what began? The body, the breath, the name. The brain is assembled gradually, neuron by neuron, sensation by sensation. The self arrives in pieces. The child learns to say, I, long after the body has lived, and even that I is stitched together from language, story, reflection. It's not a birth, it's a formation, and all formations dissolve. You imagine death as disappearance, but disappearance from where? The moment before you were born, do you remember it? Was it dark? Was it silent? Were you not there? Or were you just not imagining yet? The same absence awaits after death, not an abyss, not a void, not a sleep, just the absence of narration. It is not frightening, it is not anything at all, but you want it to be something, so you imagine ghosts, reincarnation, heavens, or nothingness, something to name what cannot be named. You want continuity, you want your story to continue, but you are not your story. And stories end whether the characters want them to or not. Science offers no soul. Neuroscience cannot locate it. Physics cannot justify it. No field of study has found a center, a kernel, a particle of you that escapes entropy. Death is the redistribution of matter, the cooling of thermodynamic heat. Your identity does not rise, it dissolves. You return to the elements, but the you returns to nowhere. And yet, death is happening now. Cells are dying, neurons collapsing, skin flaking. Every second, pieces of you end. Death is not a moment. It is a process already underway. You are not approaching death. You are passing through it in slices every day. And even if you lived forever, what then? The philosopher Bernard Williams posed this in his thought experiment of Alina. Macropulis, a woman granted immortality who becomes numb, indifferent, eroded by eternal repetition. Immortality is not relief. It is a curse of sameness. Meaning requires limits. Experience requires an edge. Without death, life becomes static noise. But your mind rejects that. It tells you, this can't be it, because the ego cannot accept non-existence. It tries to imagine a world without itself, but the attempt fails. Because you are the lens doing the imagining. So you make it poetic. You say you'll live on through your children, through art, through memory. But memory fades. Names fade. Even legacies vanish. How many people who lived 1,000 years ago do you know? How many of their thoughts survive in your mind? You are not remembered. You are recycled. You become soil. You become air. You become silence. And silence is not absence. It is the condition for everything else. The mystics, the physicists, the poets, they converge on one truth. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe observing itself, briefly, through a narrow aperture. Death is not a departure. It is the closing of a temporary window, and the cosmos continues. Unboarded, your heart stops. Your patterns fade, but the molecules persist. The light persists. The spinning of atoms, the motion of time, the forgetting. There is no afterlife, because there was never a you to continue. There is only change. And yet, even now, death frightens. You, because you still believe you are in the middle of something, that this moment matters, that there's a climax, a resolution, a final line you're supposed to reach. But life has no plot. It is not a story. It is a sequence of unfolding perception, misinterpreted as a narrative arc. You were not given this life, you were thrown into it. You were not owed an ending. You were not guaranteed a conclusion. You were a flare in the dark, bright, momentary, forgotten. And if death is not an event, if it is not a doorway, if the self was never fixed, if your life is just the flicker of pattern on passing matter, if you do not leave behind anything stable, lasting, or you, then who is it that fears being gone? You wake up and feel like you are back. A voice resumes. A center reasserts itself. But what is this thing you call consciousness? You treat it like a spotlight, a command tower, a soul wrapped in attention. But what if it isn't control? What if it's just a side effect and afterglow? What if consciousness is not the captain of the ship, but the wake behind it? You think consciousness is primary, but everything important happens before it. Your brain detects, decides, initiates then. Consciousness narrates. You see a red light, and your foot moves toward the brake. Only after the motion begins do you become aware that you have chosen. The delay is milliseconds, but it is everything. You are not conscious before your life happens. You are conscious of what already has. You are the audience, not the actor. Consider the phenomenon of blind sight. Individuals with damage to the visual cortex claim they can't see, but when asked to guess where an object is, they point correctly. Their eyes perceive, their motor system responds, but they don't see. The perception happens without awareness. You are perceiving far more than you know. Then there are epileptic seizures, particularly temporal lobe seizures that trigger intense religious or mystical experiences. Patients report feeling the presence of God, profound unity, overwhelming emotion, but it's not revelation. It's electricity misfiring in the brain. Even your deepest truths can be neurochemical illusions. And then there's the rubber. Hand illusion. A fake hand is placed in front of you, while your real hand is hidden. Both are stroked in sync. Soon you feel the fake hand is yours. Consciousness is fooled. Ownership is plastic. You think your body is you, but it's just the boundary your brain agrees to accept until it doesn't. Where does you stop? Your skin, your memories, your tools, your culture. There is no boundary, only a shifting interface. Consciousness feels unified, but in split patience, the two hemispheres behave as if they are two minds. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. One side writes a sentence, the other erases it. Each believes it is the conscious self. So which one is you? The truth, consciousness, is not singular. It is modular, fragmented, and often contradictory. When you think, you're often arguing with your self-competing voices, memories, motivations. The illusion of unity is a compromise forged by habit and denial. And denial runs deep. You don't notice most of what your brain does. You breathe, digest, balance, move, recognize, analyze all. Below awareness. Your visual system processes data faster than your conscious mind can comprehend. You live in a summary, a filtered digest of vast, unconscious processing. You see a world your brain lets you see. Consciousness is not a driver. It's a spokesperson. When damage occurs to the anterior cingulate cortex, people lose the ability to assign importance. They still think, still perceive, but nothing matters. There is thought without relevance, perception without weight. You are not just thought, you are sentience, and even that can be disabled. So what, exactly, is the light inside your head? Some call it the hard problem, the question of why experience feels like anything. Why is it like this to be you? Why is there a felt quality? Why not just blind computation? Science can explain the mechanisms, the neurons, the feedback loops, the networks. But no theory explains the feeling of red, the taste of shame, the weight of silence. You live inside that gap, and it grows darker the more you look. Consciousness may be emergent, a result of complexity, a byproduct of recursive processing, a mirror folded onto itself. Or it may be fundamental like space-time, or embedded into the fabric of reality. We don't know. We may never know. Because to study it, you must use it. The tool is the thing being measured. You cannot step outside consciousness to examine it. There is no external vantage. Every attempt to see it clearly just reflects more of itself. You are caught in a hall of mirrors, trying to find the while and still, you pretend to steer. You make choices. You reflect. You take pride, feel shame, plan, imagine. But consciousness is a surface fragile, delayed, reactive. It is the echo of the machine convincing itself it is free. You are not the spark. You are the smoke. And if your consciousness can be fooled, if it emerges late to the scene, if it fabricates stories to justify behavior, if it fragments under pressure, if it can be drugged, distorted, severed, simulated, then what is it really? What is this witness you cling to? And if the witness is just another illusion, a puppet watching shadows, a mirror lit by accident, then who or what is watching you now? You think memory is a recording. You imagine it like a video stored, intact, waiting to be replayed. But memory is not storage. It is reconstruction. Each time you remember something, you don't retrieve it to rebuild it from fragments, from guesses, from context. You rewrite the past just to keep yourself from unraveling, and you call it truth. In 1974, psychologists Elizabeth Loftus and John Palmer demonstrated how easy it is to distort memory. When people watched a car crash and were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, they recalled higher speeds than when the word was simply hit. Language altered memory. Words rewrote perception. Your past is vulnerable to suggestion. You believe you remember your childhood, but how many of those memories are stories others told you, photos you've seen, emotions you feel now, retroactively projected? Every recollection is filtered through. Who you are today is not who you were then. You are remembering from a moving platform. Your brain is not a hard drive. It edits constantly. Gaps are filled. Details are smoothed. Contradictions are deleted, and yet you believe it. Because memory is not about accuracy. It's about continuity. You remember not to preserve the past, but to preserve the illusion that you've always been the same person. Without memory, identity shatters. Think of patients with amnesia. Some lose the ability to form new memories. Others forget their past entirely. They still feel emotion. They still perceive. But their narrative collapses. The thread is cut, and what is left? A presence without origin. A moment without trajectory. You fear that condition more than death, because without memory, you cannot explain yourself. You cannot justify your pain, your values, your loyalties. Everything becomes arbitrary, and you begin to wonder, were you ever really that person? Or was that just the version your mind kept alive because it was useful? How many times have you rewritten your past to survive your present? You say things like "I've always known" or "I've never been like that." But that's a lie. You have changed. You've forgotten the contradictions. You've hidden your own hypocrisy. Memory is not honest. It is strategic. It's the fiction you call truth, so you don't dissolve into chaos. And sometimes, memory invents entirely. False memory syndrome is real. People can be led to believe they committed crimes, witnessed events, lived lives that never happened. The confidence in the memory doesn't prove its reality. Belief is not evidence. Certainty is not accuracy. Your mind needs coherence more than it needs truth, and it will invent anything to maintain the illusion. You remember emotions, not facts. Feelings become anchors. The smell of a room, the look on someone's face. But those feelings are led by mood, belief, hindsight. You don't remember what happened. You remember how it feels now to think about what you think happened. You mistake emotional vividness for accuracy, but trauma makes that vividness worse. Traumatic memories feel more real, more fixed, but they too change. Neuroscience shows that recalling a traumatic memory reactivates it, and during that reactivation, it can be altered, strengthened, softened, reshaped. You are haunted by reconstructions that have evolved every time you remembered them. You are haunted by ghosts you help create. Even the order of your life can shift. When people recount life stories, they often place events in sequences that serve meaning rather than chronology. You reshape timelines to explain outcomes. You invent foreshadowing. You erase detours. You need to believe in a through-line heaven when there was none. And what about the things you can't remember? What was your third birthday like? What did your parents say to you the first time you cried from love? What did you think about the sky the first time you noticed it had color? You don't remember not because it wasn't important, but because memory is selective, and selection is violence. What you forget defines you as much as what you recall. You are what your brain chose to keep, and sometimes you wish you could forget more, but even that desire, forgetting pain, is shaped by memory. You remember the consequences of remembering. You remember the weight of carrying, and so you long for erasure. But erasure is not healing. It's just another lie. Another version of you that believes something new. And so your memories shift. Again, if your memory is a story told in the present, if each retelling is a revision, if your brain rewrites the past to protect you, if every memory is biased, incomplete, or false, if forgetting is not failure but function, then how much of who you think you are was ever even real? You think in words, you explain, describe, categorize. You believe that when you say something, you are transmitting truth, but language is not transparent. It is not a window. It is a structure, a prison, a tool that shapes your world more than it reflects it. You think you use language, but language uses you. You were born into a system of meaning that existed before you. Words with definitions, sentences with rules, grammar that molds thought. You learned to speak, and in doing so, you learned to slice the world into pieces, names, boundaries, labels, a constant act of artificial separation. You were taught to divide reality in order to make it manageable. But each word is a box, and once you name something, you trap it. You say tree, and the infinite uniqueness of that living organism vanishes. You say love, and your ache, your grief, your terror, your tenderness are all crushed under one syllable. You say self, and 1,000 shifting patterns are reduced to a single hollow point. Language simplifies to function. It does not reveal. It replaces, think of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The structure of a language influences how its speakers perceive the world. Some languages have no word for left or right, only cardinal directions. Their speakers navigate like living compasses. Others have no future tense. Their speakers experience time differently, with less emphasis on tomorrow. Your reality bends around your vocabulary, and your language does more than describe, it excludes. It defines not just what you can say, but what you can think. If there is no word for it, how do you know it's real? How do you hold a sensation, a suspicion, an insight, if your culture never gave you the tools to express it? There are things you feel that have no name, and in naming others, you forget them. You believe words point to things, but often they just point to other words. Language is a closed system, definitions, built on definitions, signs, referencing. Signs, you look up truth and find fact, then reality, then that which is true. You are circling meaning, never touching it. It's not a ladder, it's a loop. The philosopher Jacques Derrida called this difference. Meaning is always deferred, never present. You think you understand, but what you understand is the chain of signs, not the thing itself. Language cannot capture being, it can only chase it. And while it chases, it controls. Language is power. The words you're allowed to say, the labels you're forced to choose, the narratives available to youth, they determine your social reality. Speak the wrong way, and you're dismissed. Use the wrong term, and you're punished. Entire populations are subjugated, not just by violence, but by the language used to describe them. What is a criminal? A terrorist, a hero, a civilian, who gets to define these? And what happens when definitions shift? Orwell warned of this in 1984. Control the language, control the thought. If a word for rebellion does not exist, the concept itself becomes unthinkable. Thought is not free if the vocabulary is limited, and your vocabulary is always limited. You don't think outside the box. The box is how you think. Even emotions are linguistic. You say sad, happy, angry, but these are categories learned from others. In some cultures, there are words for emotions you don't even realize you're having, like May, the sweet indulgence of dependency, or lettuce, a sudden sadness inspired by one's own inadequacy. Your feelings are filtered through words, and the words shrink them. Language frames not just what you express, but how you experience. You read this now, and perhaps think in English. But what would you be if you had grown up speaking a language with no pronouns, or one where verbs encode the shape of the object being acted upon, or one with no words for ownership, only relationships? You would be someone else, because the mind you think as yours is built in grammar, syntax, metaphor. Your entire worldview is scaffolded in linguistic habits, and those habits are not chosen. They were inherited, repeated, institutionalized. You believe you are speaking freely, but the words were pre-selected, and in that selection is your silence. There are truths you cannot say, because the words don't exist, or because they're forbidden, or because when you try, they come out wrong, distorted by grammar, betrayed by vocabulary. You know something deeper is there, but it slips every time you try to hold it in syllables. And if language can't hold it, what can? What is left of you when you stop talking? When the words fall away? When the internal monologue goes quiet, and all that remains is sensation, perception, awareness? Is that what's always been beneath you? And if your every belief, identity, and memory was shaped by language? If your thoughts are scripted in words that belong to a culture, a history, a structure not your own. If meaning is deferred, distorted, and repackaged every time you speak, if language is the grid that defines your world, while denying most of it, then what do you become when you finally run out of words? You tell yourself the world is solid, that objects exist, that space is real, that time flows forward. You navigate by laws, by logic, by material certainty. But reality is not what you think it is. It is not a stage upon which events occur. It is a hallucination sustained only by the parts you agree not to question, because the moment you question them, they dissolve. Take color, you see red, blue, green. You imagine these as properties of objects, but color doesn't exist out there. Light has wavelengths. Your eyes detect them. Your brain interprets them. Red is not in the appellates in your cortex. Without a nervous system tuned to perceive, the world would be colorless. You are not seeing reality. You are seeing a model of it, and that model lies to you constantly. Even the objects you touch aren't what they seem. Your hand never actually contacts the table. Electromagnetic forces repel your atoms from its atoms. Solidity is an illusion of resistance. There is more space than substance in everything you call thing. Matter is mostly empty, and yet it feels full. Why? Because feeling is fabrication. Your body is a translator. It takes light, vibration, pressure, chemical interactions, and converts them into a narrative you can navigate. It filters, simplifies, censors. You do not hear all sounds. You do not see all light. You do not sense most of the universe. You exist in a curated sliver of what's there, a private hallucination mistaken for a shared world, and yet you insist on its objectivity. You say reality is what's out there, but quantum mechanics destroys that comfort. A particle's state is undefined until observed. Superposition, entanglement, non-locality, reality at its smallest. Scale is not definite, it is probabilistic. Your observation is not passive. It is part of what determines what is. You are not just witnessing the world. You are helping to create it, and it goes deeper. The observer effect isn't just about particles, it's about interpretation. You can't look at the world without changing it. Your questions shape what answers are possible. The tools you use determine what you find. There is no view from nowhere. Every lens distorts. So where is the real world? Is it the Newtonian machine, the quantum haze, the relativistic warp of space-time? The biological frame of your own nervous system? These are not layers of reality. They are incompatible maps. None is the territory. All are approximations. Reality resists simplification, and the more you try to fix it, to define it, to measure, the more it slips. What is a chair? Is it a tool, a set of molecules, a cloud of probability? A social agreement, a cultural artifact? Each answer is true in one frame, false in another. There is no essence, no core. Reality is not substance, it is context, and your context is not. Stable in altered states, dreams, trauma, meditation. Reality bends, walls melt, time loops, identity fades. And when you return, you dismiss it as not real. But how do you know? What makes this state, the waking state, any more real than the others? Only that you keep returning to it. And even that might be part of the illusion. Consider simulation theory. If it is possible to simulate conscious beings, and if advanced civilizations run such simulations, then the probability you are in the base reality is near zero. You could be digital, emulated, running on a system outside your comprehension, but even if you were not simulated, your reality is still a construction, constructed by physics, by biology, by culture, by language, by trauma. You were never given raw access. You were given a filtered stream, and from that stream you built a world and called it real. But whose world is it? The child sees monsters. The schizophrenic hears voices. The cultist sees prophecy and shadows. Are these unreal, or just realities that you don't share? You label them hallucinations, but your own perceptions are also approximations. The line between real and unreal is drawn by consensus, not certainty. Reality is the hallucination that enough people agree on, and when people stop agreeing, wars start, because belief feels like knowledge. And when your version of reality is challenged, you feel like you are being erased. That's why you defend it, why you kill for it, why you would rather destroy others than admit. You might not be right, but reality doesn't care about your certainty. It survives your interpretations. It outlives your frameworks. It waits silently as you argue over its name, its shape, its meaning. It has no obligation to make sense to you. It does not exist for your comfort. It is not here to be fair or clear or just. It is what remains when everything you thought was real proves false, and if what you see is not reality, if what you touch is force fields, if your thoughts are filtered simulations, if observation shapes what you observe, if language distorts what you describe, if culture defines what is real and what is madness, then how will you ever know if you've actually woken up? You wake up every day and resume the performance. You remember your name, your goals, your fears, your past. You reconstruct the mask. You call it me, but there is no self under the self. No core, no original, just the story, just the voice that says, I am. And that voice is a lie. The philosopher David Hume searched for the self and found only perceptions, thoughts, feelings, impressions, is arising and vanishing, never stable, never identical, just flickers. He concluded there is no self, only a bundle of experiences, stitched together by memory and habit, and you are still stitching every memory, every preference, every word you speak about yourself is part of the script. The longer you speak it, the more real it feels. But what you're doing is maintaining the illusion. You are your own PR department. You curate your image for others, for yourself, until you forget there was ever a difference. And what happens if you stop? What happens when you realize the person you were 5 years ago isn't you but a ghost with your face? Your preferences have changed. Your values have shifted. Your beliefs have broken. Your body has aged, mutated, decayed. And yet you keep saying I. You keep pretending that there is some unchanging essence behind the mask. But what is that essence made of? Is it your soul, your memories, your brain, your continuity of thought? If you fall asleep and forget a dream, does that mean you ceased to exist? If you lose consciousness under anesthesia, did the self pause? Or did it vanish entirely only to be rebuilt afterward? If a person suffers brain trauma and loses all memory, are they still the same self? You say yes out of habit, but the you before trauma and the you after are strangers. They just share a body. The mind behind the eyes changed and you're terrified to admit that identity is this fragile, so you pretend that you are stable, that you are continuous, that you are the same self from yesterday, from childhood, from wherever your story begins. But this is a retroactive fiction. You look at your past and impose a narrative plot points, growth arcs, causes and effects, but life isn't a story. It's a sequence. The arc is a projection, and when you stop projecting, the illusion cracks. Consider dissociative identity disorder, multiple selves, inhabiting the same body, with their own memories, voices, gestures, beliefs. What does that say about you? How thin is the wall between oneself and another? How many masks do you already wear? One for your parents, one for your lovers, one for when you're alone. Which one is real? All of them. None of them. Even in neuroscience, there is no self-center in the brain, no seat of identity. Just networks modules interacting, memories firing, scripts playing. You are a pattern of behavior held together by reinforcement, a feedback loop mistaking its own coherence for autonomy. And yet you feel so sure, because the self feels real. The I feels like a controller, a thinker, a decider. But that's just narrative gravity. The brain constructs a point of integration, a place where all the sensory data, memories, intentions coalesce. That point becomes you. But it's not a self. It's a symptom. You are the echo, not the speaker. And even that echo is fragile. In meditation, the self dissolves. In psychedelics, it vanishes entirely. You become sensation without narration. Awareness without identity. It terrifies some, enlightens others. But the takeaway is the same. The self was never essential. It was always optional. And yet you keep returning to it, because society demands it. Legal systems, religions, economies, all require a persistent you to reward or punish. The illusion of the self is socially reinforced. Your identity is policed by your peers. Your consistency is enforced by memory. So you keep pretending, you keep saying, I. You keep telling the story, even when it no longer fits. And what happens? When you outgrow your narrative, when the roles you played feel like cages, when your personality becomes a costume that no longer moves with your bones, you feel the panic of dissolution. But maybe that panic is truth trying to surface. If the self is a story, if memory fabricates its continuity, if biology shows no center, if psychology reveals only performance, if every you is just the version others reflect back at you, then who is it that's been telling this story the whole time? You make choices. You decide when to speak, when to stop, when to move. You feel intention rise, and you follow it. You feel guilt when things go wrong, pride when they go right. You believe you could have done otherwise. But this belief that you are the author of your actions is the last lie holding your reality together, because you never decided anything. You only witnessed the outcome in 1983. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that shattered the illusion of conscious will. He measured brain activity as participants were asked to move a finger at a moment of their choosing. What he found, the brain began preparing the movement several hundred milliseconds before the participants were aware of their decision. The decision was already made. The feeling of choice came after. Since then, countless studies have confirmed it. Neural activity precedes conscious intention. The brain initiates, the self rationalizes. You are not driving the car. You are the passenger pretending to hold the wheel. And still, you cling to it. Because without free will, where does that leave you? Every reward, every punishment, every ounce of guilt and pride depends on the idea that you could have chosen. otherwise. But if your genetics, your upbringing, your culture, your environment, and your unconscious brain processes have already stacked the deck, what is left for you to control? You do not choose your thoughts. They appear. You do not choose your desires. They arise. You do not choose your emotions. They erupt. You are not the source. You are the stage. And yet the illusion persists because it has to. The philosopher Daniel Wegner called it the illusion of conscious will. You feel like you cause your actions because you see a correlation between thought and movement. But correlation is not causation. The thought is not a trigger, it's a narrator, describing what your body and brain were already doing. It's theater, post hoc explanation, reverse-engineered justification. And the deeper you look, the more cracks you find. Why did you choose coffee instead of tea this morning? Was it free will or habit? Why did you reach out to that person? Was it choice or unconscious craving for validation? Why did you lash out? Was it anger or trauma masquerading as justice? You do not know, but you explain anyway. You have to explain, because the alternative is unbearable. If you are not responsible, then who is? The criminal, the addict, the abuser, the child soldier, the corrupt CEO, the failed parent, the part of you that ruined what mattered most. You want to hold someone accountable. You want to believe there was choice, that they could have stopped, that you could have stopped. But what if none of you could? What if every action was inevitable, shaped by neural networks, formed by childhood scripts, directed by a cascade of events that began before birth and never stopped unfolding? What then is guilt? What then is justice? Even in the legal system, this question festers. The more we understand neuroscience, the harder it becomes to justify punishment. If a tumor in the frontal lobe can turn a person into a killer, and removing it restores their impulse control, was it ever them? But what if every brain is just a tumor of experience? There is no moral center, no soul weighing good and evil, just circuitry, just chemistry, just conditioned responses, and still the illusion fights back. You feel free. You feel responsible, because the self needs control like the body needs oxygen. Without it, identity collapses, accountability vanishes, and yet the very idea of freedom may be the most coercive lie ever told, because it makes you blame yourself for what was never yours. You punish yourself for the thoughts that arise unbidden, for the failures you replay every night, for the words you didn't mean to say, but said anyway. You imagine a version of yourself who could have done better, but that version never existed. It was a ghost built from hindsight. And yet, society depends on this lie. It keeps order. It builds ambition. It justifies suffering. If you're poor, you must have made bad choices. If you're miserable, it's because you chose the wrong path. If you're abused, it must have been something you allowed. Free will becomes the excuse for cruelty and for worship. You praise heroes. You idolize greatness. You envy the disciplined and the gifted, but none of it was earned. Not truly. They were shaped like you. They were thrown into conditions. They were programmed by chance. Even your envy isn't yours. It was installed, and so you continue, haunted by choices you didn't make, condemned by standards you didn't set, reaching for futures that were never really yours to shape. If your brain acts before you think, if your desires were planted by culture, if your fears are echoes of childhood, if the feeling of choice is a narrative, not a fact, if you are the observer of the outcome, not its architect, then who is it that you've been trying so desperately to forgive? You feel it passing, each second ticking forward like a metronome carved into your skull. You age, you wait, you rush, you regret, you hope. You live your entire life inside this movement from future to present to past. But time is not what you think it is, and your obedience to it is not just habit. It is a form of captivity, because time doesn't move. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the illusion. Time is not separate from space. It is woven into it, space-time. 4 dimensions, tangled together. Time doesn't flow, it is. The past and the future are not gone or not yet. They are simply elsewhere in the structure. Everything you've done and everything you will do already exists. You imagine the present as a thin sliver slicing forward, but that's an illusion created by memory and anticipation. Your brain constructs a moving window and calls it now, but the universe has no such window. There is no master clock, no universal present. Time is relative to motion, to gravity, to perception. There are places in the cosmos where your now hasn't happened yet, and others where it's already over. Even your own body betrays this. Light from the stars takes years to reach. When you gaze at the night sky, you're seeing ghosts. You are always looking backward. Even your own reflection in the mirror is a fraction of a second behind. You never see the present. You only infer it, and what you infer is stitched together. Your brain edits perception to create a smooth, flowing world. But vision, hearing, sensation, they arrive asynchronously. You don't see the world in real time. You see a delayed, constructed version that feels immediate. Your consciousness is always lagging behind, buffering the stream like a corrupted video. And yet you chase it, because time keeps you running. It tells you there's not enough, that you are late, that you must catch up, that you're wasting it, that you must fill it, that you must measure your worth by how you use it, that you are valuable only if you are productive. But time is not a currency, it is a cage. You build clocks, calendars, schedules, you carve your life into increments, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, deadlines, milestones, retirement, and you believe in this rhythm so deeply that it becomes your God. You serve it, obey it, fear it, and you resent it because it keeps taking from you. Time takes your youth, your energy, your relationships, your body, and gives you nothing in return, except the promise of more time. But more of what? More repetition, more maintenance, more delays. You hope that tomorrow will redeem today, that the future will explain the past, that time will eventually make sense of your suffering. But time is not meaning, it is just motion. Change without purpose, erosion without destination. And if there is no direction, what are you running toward? In Buddhist philosophy, they speak of the eternal now, a moment outside of time, ever present, ever unfolding, but you can't live there, because your mind demands sequence. Your biology demands cause and effect. Your society demands planning, so you stay in exile between nostalgia and anxiety. Regret pulls you backward, fear pushes you forward, but there is no way to stand still. Every attempt to hold on to youth, to beauty, to love fails, because even your grip is dissolving. Time takes everything, and in doing so, it teaches you the most brutal lesson, that permanence is a lie. Even your memories decay, neurons die, stories distort. You are a collection of moments that you cannot return to. Even the happiest ones rot under repetition. Joy, becomes longing. Longing becomes grief. Time does not just move forward. It disfigures what it leaves behind. And still, you keep hoping it will bring relief. As if time itself owes you something. As if the future is a promise. But time has no morality. No empathy, no awareness. It devours children and tyrants alike. It forgets the prayers of the desperate. It silences the laughter of the innocent. It does not care. Time is not your healer. Time is your undertaker. And what of the future? The version of you that finally has it all together. The one who fixes every mistake, who forgives, who is forgiven, who finds peace. That person is a myth. You are always almost that person, but never quite, because time never delivers clarity, only distance. And distance is not in sight. It is just separation. If the present is an illusion, if the past is reconstruction, if the future is fantasy, if time is relative, warped, indifferent, if clocks are fictions you take too seriously, then what is it you think you're waiting for? You live like it's behind you, like death is an event that waits somewhere in the future, distant, negotiable, theoretical. You speak of it in metaphors. You turn it into silence. You delay its presence with rituals, distractions, euphemisms. But death is not an end. Death is the backdrop, the constant, the invisible wall behind every thought you've ever had. You don't fear death itself. You fear the point at which you realize it's always been there. Every heartbeat is a countdown. Every breath is a payment. And yet, you live under the assumption that life is the default death, the interruption. But biologically, statistically, cosmically, it's the other way around. Death is what happens. Life is the rare glitch, the anomaly, the flicker. And your flicker is already dimming. Cells are dying as you read this. Neurons are decaying. Skin is shedding. The body you occupy is already halfway through its own autopsy. You are not alive and then dead. You are dying in motion. You just call it aging to make it tolerable. But what is death, really? You picture a moment, a final breath, a line going flat, a stillness that cannot be reversed. But is that the border, or just the symptom? Consciousness doesn't flip like a switch, it fades. Even now, parts of your mind are inaccessible, unconscious, dormant. Every night, in sleep, you vanish and reappear. So what happens the night? You don't come back. Some believe in an afterlife, others in nothingness. But neither answer removes the horror that you will be gone, not the world. You and you have never experienced non-existence before. How do you prepare for what you can't even simulate? You don't. You just look away. You chase achievement. You build legacy. You try to outrun the erasure. You take photos, write journals, upload yourself in fragments across social media like pieces of a backup. But death is not deletion. It is the realization that the backup was never real to begin with. What did you think you were preserving? Your name. Names are sounds. Your face. Faces are meat. Your thoughts. Thoughts require a brain. Your impact. Memory decays faster than you think. The world forgets quickly, and rightly so. You are not a monument. You are a ripple. And ripples disappear. Legacy is a comfort for the living. The dead feel nothing. In ancient philosophy, some said, memento mori, remember death, not to depress you, but to strip illusion, to clear away the false permanence, to remind you that every choice is weighed against the only thing that's certain, it ends. But how often do you really remember? You plan for decades you may not see. You argue over futures that will outlast your breath. You hurt others in the name of goals you might not reach. You postpone your peace for a version of you that will be dead before it arrives. And still, you keep pretending you're safe. But death does not wait. It is not an appointment. It is inside your decisions. The food you eat, the love you neglect, the time you waste. It is not an intruder. It is your twin. The only thing that's ever truly known you, and still you recoil from it. Because if death is real, truly real, then all your excuses collapse. You cannot delay your awakening. You cannot defer meaning. You cannot build a life made only of waiting. You must face what you are. And that means facing what you're not. You are not eternal. You are not essential. You are not safe. And yet, there is something terrifyingly beautiful in this, that you are the brief awareness of an otherwise silent universe, that you are the echo that noticed it was echoing, that for this flicker of time, the void became self-aware and called itself you, but only for a moment. And if death is not out there, but already in motion, if your life is a slow unspooling of endings, if your memories, your beliefs, your identity are all dissolving, if your legacy is dust, if even your awareness was only a temporary glitch, then who exactly is the one trying to live forever? You think you know what happened, that the past is a stable record, a sequence of events, documented and archived, ready to be consulted. You think history is behind you. But history is not a story, it's a negotiation, a war over meaning, written by survivors, edited by power, believed by those who need the comfort of a beginning, middle, and end. But what if none of it's settled? What if the past is as unstable as the self? You were taught a timeline, battles, kings, revolutions, a clean chain of cause and effect. But each link is twisted, each date a simplification, each name a mask. Every textbook is an erasure, every monument a distortion, every anthem a lullaby for forgetting. History is not what happened, it is what was chosen to be remembered. Consider the Library of Alexandria, thousands of scrolls, science, philosophy, medicine burned, gone. You will never know what was lost, or who was silenced, or what truths were reduced to ash before you were born. The record is incomplete, but worse, it is deliberately incomplete. Erasure is power. Colonial empires rewrote the histories of the people they conquered. Names changed. Cultures were buried. Languages disappeared. The past was overwritten to justify the present. Entire civilizations framed as primitive so that conquest could look like salvation. What you call history is often just propaganda that aged well. You imagine yourself at the end of a long chain of progress. But this illusion is built on selective memory. You forget the detours, the collapses, the genocides that were called necessary, the atrocities rebranded as victories. You inherited a filtered timeline that flatters you into thinking civilization has direction. But history doesn't move forward. It circles, it forgets, it repeats. Even your own personal history, how much do you actually remember? How much of what you believe about your past was told to you by others, by media, by family, by photos that froze a moment and gave it the illusion of permanence? A still frame is not a life. You say, I know what happened, and yet every witness sees differently. Memory shifts, evidence is lost, narratives compete, and you choose the version that suits your current identity best. You don't learn history. You select it. Even science, The great archivist of reality writes its own story constantly. Paradigms collapse. Theories are replaced. Newton becomes Einstein, becomes quantum haze. You do not accumulate certainty. You accumulate better versions of doubt. Truth is not linear. It is recursive. And still, the dream of history persists because you need it. To anchor yourself, to justify your beliefs, to explain your suffering, to believe that what happened meant something, that there is a narrative arc, that someone is keeping track, but the past doesn't care about coherence. It happened in chaos. There is no official version. There are only fragments, letters, ruins, bones, footage, graffiti, testimony. You patch them together into a story, but the stitching shows. The gaps widen, and beneath it all, a more terrifying possibility emerges that you are standing on. A foundation built entirely of guesses, that your entire sense of how the world got here might be wrong. What if there was never progress, only forgetting? What if every golden age was just a silence before collapse? What if the values you call modern are just ancient instincts in new costumes? What if the technology you worship is just a more efficient method of denial? And what if the future you envision peace, stability, evolution is not the destination of history, but a hallucination that history keeps offering just long enough to keep you from revolting? History is the dream, and waking up means realizing the dream was curated. If every event is a reconstruction, if the past is filtered by trauma and power, if memory is malleable, if every record is incomplete, if every monument is a negotiation, if history is told by the loudest survivors, then who are you, really? If everything that made you is built on a lie you didn't get to choose? You move through the world as someone, a name, a nationality, a gender, a religion, a role. You defend these things. You shape your entire experience through them. But who were you before you knew how to answer the question, what are you? And who would you be if the answers were taken away? You think your identity is who you are, but identity is who you are permitted to be. It is not a discovery. It is an assignment, a negotiation between biology, culture, trauma, and the need to belong. You inherit it before you understand it. You absorb it before you can resist it. And eventually, you wear it so long, it starts to feel like skin. But it isn't skin. It's scaffolding. Psychologists know that identity forms through mirroring. You see your parents' reactions, your society's categories. You mimic, you internalize. You split yourself to fit expectations. Not because you're fake, but because survival depends on being recognizable. You don't become yourself. You become someone others can accept. And that someone quickly becomes a cage. The clothes you wear, the language you speak, the way you laugh, even, are these choices or repetitions of scripts handed to you long ago? Are you free? Or are you a collection of stereotypes you've polished into personality? Even rebellion is structured. Even nonconformity has a dress code. You say this is just who I am. But what you mean is, this is the version of me that has worked so far. The version that hasn't been punished. The version that earns love. That avoids abandonment. That fits the story others expect from me. But deep down, there are versions of you. You've buried the child that cried too much. The teenager who dissociated. The adult who wakes up and doesn't recognize the person in the mirror. You perform the self, and the performance gets applause, so you keep going. But the cost of applause is authenticity, and the longer you perform, the harder it becomes to remember what the silence felt like, if you ever knew. Even the words you use to describe yourself are borrowed. Introvert, empath, survivor, addict, immigrant, queer, father, genius, victim, artist. Each word carries with it a cultural payload, a script you're expected to follow. And once you name yourself, you start living up to the expectations that come with it. Language doesn't just reflect identity, it creates it. And in that creation, something is always lost. Your body is labeled, your mind is pathologized, your history is rewritten by whatever label society pins to your chest. You become a representative of a type, not a person, a demographic, a case study, a role, and you forget what it means to just be. In therapy, when people begin to heal, they often face something unexpected: identity collapse. The roles they played, achiever, victim, addict, start to dissolve. And in the absence of those labels, they feel terror, because what's left beneath the identity is unfamiliar, not a better self, just silence. And yet, beneath the noise of performance and personality, that silence might be closer to what you are, not something that can be named, not something that needs validation, not someone just this, just presence, but you are trained to run from silence, to fill it with definitions, to drown it in roles, to keep building and rebuilding the mask. And when others try to define you, you either fight or submit. But both responses strengthen the illusion that there is something there to defend. What if identity is not something you own, but something that owns you? What if finding yourself is a trap? What if the truth is not that you are someone, but that you are no one in particular? If identity is constructed, if personality is performance, if roles are inherited, if the self is adaptive, reactive, malleable, if every label shrinks what you might have been, then what happens when you finally stop asking who you are?